This video is for lesson 2 in our mini unit. We are going to simplify radicals. We've already done this a little bit, but we're just going to review it. So we're just going to jump down here to examples. It says simplify the radical expression 320. So what we need to do is we need to take the number that's under the radical and we need to factor it. So 320. Okay. I always, if it's even, I divide by 2. So let me move this over here. So I can do 320 divided by 2, and that gives me 160. 2 is a prime. That's what we're looking for. We're wanting to do prime factorization. 160 is even, so I can divide it by 2. So I've got 2 times 80. 2 is prime. 80 divided by 2 gives me a 40. So 2 times 40. 2 is prime. 40 is even. So now I have 2 times 20. 20 is even, so I can divide it by 2. And I've got 2 times 10. And then 10 simplifies down into 2 times 5. So what this is, if you take all these numbers that we circled and you multiply them together, you will get 320. Now, since this is a square root, we want groups of 2. So I have 2 2's, so I'm going to write that as 2 squared. I have another 2 2's, so 2 squared. Another 2 2's, so 2 squared. And then I have a 5. Now, what happens when you square root this? Again, remember, you can split this up into individual square roots. And what happens is the square root and the exponent of 2, these cancel each other. So what I'm left with is 2 times 2 times 2 times the square root of 5. 2 times 2 times 2 gives me an 8. And then I just tack that square root of 5 onto the end. Okay. Let's look at a little bit different example. Let's look at this one. So now I've got 3 times the square root of 72. So I want to simplify just what's under the square root, the 72. So I'm going to divide it by 2, and I get 2 times 36. Okay, 36 is even, and that breaks down into 2 times 18. 2 is prime. 18 breaks down into 2 times 9, and then 9 breaks down into 3 times 3. All right, so what I have here, I have a 3 times groups of 2 again. So 2 squared, so it's still underneath that radical. That radical is not gone yet. And then I've got a pair of 3's times 3 squared. And then I have just this lonely old 2, and we just put him underneath the radical. So the radical cancels an exponent of 2. The radical cancels the exponent of 2. So I'm left with 3, don't forget that 3 in the front, times 2, times 3, and then times the square root of 2. So 3 times 2 times 3 gives me an 18, and then I just tack the square root of 2 onto the end. All right, a couple more examples here. We've got 363. So we need to break that down. 363 is not even. So I'm going to see if it's divisible by 3. And it is. 3 and 121. Okay. Now let's see if 121 is divisible by 3. It's not. So now I have to see what is 121 divisible by. And you can go through values until you find one. I know that 121 is divisible by 11. 121 is 11 times 11. But you can easily just work through your values. You can also use that squares and square root chart that you have in your notes. So what I have here, pairs again, 11 and 11. So that's 11 squared. It's still square rooted. And then that lonely 3. So The exponent and the radical cancel each other out, so I'm left with 11 times the square root of 3. All right, E is another example where it's kind of compound already. So we're going to break 80 down. 80 is the same as 2 times 40. 2 is prime. 40 is the same as 2 times 20. 20 is the same as 2 times 10. And 10 is the same as 2 times 5. So I've got this 4 out to the front. Now I'm looking for pairs. So I've got 2 2's. So that's the square root of 2 squared. 2 2's. So the square root of 2 squared. And then the little 5. So the square root of 5. All right, radicals and exponents cancel each other out. So I'm left with 4 times 2 times 2 times the square root of 5. And 4 times 2 times 2 gives me a 16. And then I just tack the square root of 5 onto the end. So you're trying to break these down into as few of terms as possible and in its simplest form. So one more example. Let's do this one, the 3 and the 252. So we're going to break 252 down. So 252 divided by 2 is 126. 126 divided by 2 is a 63. 63 is not divisible by 2, so we're going to check, and it is divisible by 3, so that's 3 times 21. 21 is the same as 3 times 7, and both of those are prime. So remember, you want everything broken down into prime factors. All right, so we've got the 3 out front, and then we're looking for pairs. 2 and 2 gives me the square root of 2 squared. So remember, all of these prime factors are still underneath a radical. We've got a pair of 3's, so 3 squared. And then we've got the 7, so the square root of 7. Radical and the exponent of 2 cancel each other. So I've got 3 times 2 times 3 times the square root of 7. 3 times 2 times 3 gives me an 18. And you just tack the square root of 7 onto the end.